At the end of winter, the sky over Edo hung heavy, dark as molten lead. In front of a rice shop at a crossroads, people stood in silence, staring at the price tags. Edo was a massive city, home to nearly 1 million people. If food stopped flowing, the city could collapse overnight. And yet, Edo survived famine again and again. Why didn't mass starvation explode here? Have you ever wondered why? The answer was not a miracle. It was the system of the city itself.
Rice prices went up again.
At this rate, white rice will be a luxury.
But Edo doesn't live on rice alone.
The real danger is when the system stops.
On the outskirts of town, quiet sounds of morning preparations echoed through the row houses. Every time rumors of famine spread, the air of the city subtly changed. People didn't panic, but their steps grew heavier. Price increases were felt before they were fully understood as numbers. Anxiety didn't spread all at once. It moved like a wave. In Edo, these small shifts were critical warning signs. Those who noticed early lived. Those who didn't, died. A giant city was extremely sensitive to crisis.
They say people are already starving in the countryside.
Same year, but Edo is still quiet.
The question is whether we act while it's still quiet.
That's why Edo survives.
Edo gathered tax rice from across the country. Warehouses belonging to regional lords lined the rivers, storing grain. It was said the city always held several months' worth of reserves. This was no accident. It was a deliberate system. Edo was not only a consumer city, but the center of distribution. Rivers and sea routes kept food flowing without interruption. If one route clogged, another remained. This redundancy made the city hard to break.
Even if rice runs short, it's not the end. Millet and potatoes appear in the markets. Food keeps circulating, just in different forms. Knowing that makes all the difference.
When rice became scarce, people adjusted their diets. From white rice, to porridge, to barley, to potatoes. Not full, but enough to survive. That flexibility raised the survival rate of the city. Still, anxiety never disappeared. What if the flow truly stopped? How many days could Edo last? That question always lingered beneath the city.
If it stops, it's over. That's why we move first. Before panic, we keep the pots going. That's how Edo lives.
As rice prices rose, daily life grew thinner. Cooking sounds faded. Pots grew lighter. Yet the fires in Edo's row houses never went completely out. Here lay Edo's unique wisdom. Edo feared isolation above all else. Isolation led directly to starvation. So the city worked to keep people connected. The smallest unit of that system was the row house.
Our pot's been getting lighter lately. Porridge today. Probably tomorrow too. But the neighbor's fire is still burning. That's your sign to speak up when you're in trouble.
Row houses held dozens of people, living shoulder to shoulder. That closeness allowed information to move fast. Who was struggling became obvious almost immediately. Ignoring others was structurally difficult. Mutual aid was not kindness. It was a survival contract. You repay when you can. When you can't, you bow your head. That realism kept the row houses functioning. On average, around 30 people lived in a single building.
Some say accepting help is shameful. But hunger leaves no room for pride. Live first. Dead men repay nothing.
Food distribution did not happen only in row houses. Temple and shrine grounds became emergency supply points. They were places where people naturally gathered and where information spread quickly. Practicality came before ideology. Edo had hundreds of temples and shrines. Each functioned as a small survival hub. Food and rumors flowed through these points. This scattered network increased the city's durability.
They're serving porridge at that temple today.
Then we should spread the word.
Late information kills.
In Edo, information is food.
But aid was never unlimited. No system could save everyone. That is why Edo's mutual support came with harsh conditions. Those who could work were expected to do so. The city balanced compassion and reality. This coldness kept the whole city alive. Not perfect equality, but not total collapse either.
Would you call this cruel? So if you can work, you work?
Exactly. To survive. If you spoil everyone, the city dies first. That's Edo's rule.
The magistrate's office could not ignore these dynamics. When rice prices destabilized, public order followed. To prevent riots, they watched the city closely. Yet the authorities always moved last. The first to act were neighborhoods, local leaders, temples. The people moved before the government. That was Edo's survival strategy.
When will the authorities help?
After the town moves. If that fails, the government steps in.
They're the final lid.
Edo's row houses were not merely places to live. They were devices that kept people alive during crisis. These devices were scattered throughout the city. That is what prevented mass starvation. But this system was not universal. Now we must look at the decisive difference between Edo and the countryside. Can you imagine that difference? The truth of Edo runs even deeper. In rural areas, each famine shook entire communities. If crops failed, replacement food rarely arrived. Mountain paths closed with snow. Regions without waterways became isolated. Stockpiles depended on each household. Failure meant death. Same country, same year. Completely different survival rates. The difference was not effort. It was structure. Edo and the countryside operated on entirely different systems. Which do you think was fair?
They say people died again this year in the countryside.
Same country. Why such a difference?
Flow. Edo lives because the flow lives. As long as it doesn't stop, the city doesn't die instantly.
Edo was a city of water. Rivers and canals ran through it like blood vessels. Where boats traveled, rice, fish, miso, and salt followed. If one route failed, another remained. That redundancy made the city hard to break. By the numbers, thousands of boats moved daily. Markets refreshed constantly. Prices shifted every day. As long as movement continued, complete rupture was unlikely.
If prices rise too much, won't people riot?
Riots happened. That's why we act early. Feed people and stones stay on the ground.
Edo did not see crisis as fear alone. Signs of unrest were read as signals to act. Food distribution, price releases, rumor control. All were directly tied to public order. This was not sentiment. It was governance technology. Total salvation never existed. But collapse could be delayed. That was the reality of cities.
Is the government protecting the people? Or protecting itself?
Both. If the city falls, the government falls too. So they keep the minimum moving.
Edo's survival strategy did not rely on heroes. It relied on countless small decisions. Rice reserves, shipping routes, markets, row houses, temples. Remove one, and the system weakens. But layered together, they compensated for each other. This overlap prevented explosive starvation. Not perfect, but resilient. That was Edo.
So was Edo safe? It sounds like no one died.
Wrong. People died. They just didn't die all at once. That's what survival means.
The society you live in today, what does it prioritize in crisis? Money, goods, or people? Edo chose to prevent isolation. Even if that choice felt cold or brutally realistic, that was the answer a massive city chose to survive. That truth has not changed.
We live inside such systems too. We just don't notice. It's a tightrope. So remember this. Cities are kept alive by people.
Edo continued to move, as if nothing had happened. Markets opened. Boats arrived. People passed each other. But beneath it all, collapse was always possible. If flow stopped even once, everything would cascade. So Edo prioritized movement above all. Not perfect salvation, but sustainable minimums. That was the reality chosen by a giant city. How do you judge that choice?
Flashy kindness doesn't save cities. Consistency does. You have to keep it moving. That's the Edo way.
Now think in numbers. If 1 million people starve at once, hundreds of tons of food are needed every single day. Keeping that moving without interruption is nearly miraculous. Edo achieved it through systems and customs. Not through one person, but through countless decisions.
So was Edo smart?
Not smart, persistent. They learned, they failed, and they remembered.
Edo's truth does not end in the past. Modern cities carry the same fragility. Logistics, information, community. If any stop, cities weaken. What supports the city you live in? Have you ever looked at the invisible flows beneath it? The people of Edo felt them daily. That is why they kept the city moving.